Hi everyone, Big Thinny Grump Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and welcome back to Daft Punk December. We got a lot to talk about here today, but before we get into the nitty gritty, I've got a quick question for you. What's your favorite anime? Whenever that question is asked, most people will typically respond with stuff you've probably heard of. Mainstream stuff like Dragon Ball, Cowboy Bebop, Demon Slayer, the works of Studio Ghibli. People who've been exposed to a bit more might say some stuff like Death Note, JoJo, Neon Genesis Evangelion. Some of the slightly more weeb-leaning viewers among you may answer with stuff that I've probably never even heard of. Stuff like Samurai Champloo, or Gintama, or even George of the Jungle 2. However, it may or may not surprise you to know that even though I like a good chunk of those movies and shows, none of them are my favorite. My favorite anime is actually rarely in the discussion of favorite animes at all. And that's because my favorite anime happens to be a slightly obscure, bizarre fever dream of a sci-fi musical film co-written by the two members of my favorite band and set to one of my favorite albums of all time. My favorite anime is Interstella 4-5. Interstella 4-5, the story of the secret star system, those are all spelled with fives by the way, is an anime film largely created by Daft Punk as well as legendary manga creator Leiji Matsumoto, who unfortunately passed away in 2023. The film was created primarily to serve as a companion piece to the duo's 2001 album Discovery. It was produced alongside the album, with Daft Punk writing the story with their creative directors Cedric Hervé and Matsumoto supervising the animation and art style. The first few sequences of the film were initially shown as standalone music videos on Toonami before it was officially released as a whole on May 28, 2003, 2 months after I was born. Coincidence? Yeah. I mean, no. If you were around during the heydays of Cartoon Network or used to browse YouTube back in the late 2000s, there's a good chance you probably saw at least a few of those videos. Even now, there's still some of Daft Punk's highest viewed videos on YouTube, mostly because Discovery features some of their most popular tracks, but it's probably also because anime aliens are way more approachable than terrifying animatronic dogs, or Francis Ford Coppola's spaghetti sauce recipe. However, this past year, Interstella has received a lot more mainstream attention. In February of this year, the guys who have been doing all the archived re-releases live-streamed a version on Twitch that was remastered and upscaled to 4K by an AI. They've since been doing a bunch of limited screenings of it throughout the year, including a bunch this month. Fucking told you Daft Punk December was gonna pay off. Now, I'm not gonna go too deep into the well of AI 4K upscaling right now because A, I'm way too stupid to know anything about that, and B, you're not here for that. You're here probably because you saw the title and you want to know why I think the movie is awesome. However, if you are interested in AI remasters, there's a really good video by Neryl that delves further in depth, and I think you should watch that, but after you finish watching my video. Like, wait for me to finish this video, like wait for the video to end and then go watch. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's go back to talking about how this is the best movie ever made. But in order to do that, I'm gonna have to pull a classic video essay maneuver and break down the plot. The story follows an alien band called the Crescendolls, who take their name from one of the tracks on Discovery. They consist of singer/keyboardist Octave, drummer Beryl, guitarist Arpeggiist, and bassist Stella. As they're performing, the band gets abducted by an evil human from Earth known as the Earl de Darkwood. Just a friendly little reminder that the guys who made this are French. The Earl takes the Crescendolls to Earth, then puts them under mind control and alters their memories and appearances to resemble humans. Once that's done, he and his record company aggressively market the band, bringing them tons of adoring fans, a countless amount of merchandising money, and of course, the coveted Gold Record Award. However, this all comes at a pretty huge cost, namely the Crescendolls' lively personalities, and their freedom to do whatever they want. Early on in the film, we're also introduced to Shep, your average handsome space pilot and owner of the coolest looking spaceship I have ever seen in a movie. He also happens to be a fan of the Crescendolls, and has a massive crush on Stella. Eventually, Shep hears about the Crescendolls kidnapping and decides to fly to Earth to save them. He eventually tracks them down to a concert and frees them from their mind control, but gets shot while trying to escape from the Earl's goons. However, before he dies, Shep manages to use the last of his strength to show Stella how much she means to him, in what is easily my favorite sequence in the entire film. After he dies, he leaves behind a device that reminds him of their past, and the Crescendos resolve to stop the Earl. The band manages to locate the Earl at his mansion, and they find his evil plan, conveniently laid out in book form. Turns out the Earl's been kidnapping a ton of alien musicians and turning them into successes on Earth in order to win gold records. And once he has 5,555 records, he can use them in a ritual to conquer the universe. The band gets captured right as the ritual is starting, but they manage to fuck shit up anyway. The mansion blows up and Arpeggius knocks the 5,555th record into a pit of lava. And then the Earl just jumps down after it and fucking dies. Lol? The Crescendos go to get their memories back, some hijinks ensue, and humanity finds out that the Crescendos are aliens and work to send them home. After some weird shit with evil spirits, I think, the Crescendos make it home and play a big concert heard on both their planet and Earth. A statue of Shep is unveiled to commemorate him, and the camera zooms out to reveal that the whole movie was just a dream this young boy had, inspired by his toys and the album. Yeah, this movie's a trip. It's a pretty solid story overall, but it's fairly simple and not terribly deep. For me though, I think the strengths of this movie lie more in how it's told visually and musically. There's no spoken dialogue in this movie, so it heavily relies on the visuals to tell the story instead. And when you get Leiji Matsumoto to help out with the visuals, you know the movie's not going to skip out on that department. This is the guy who made like basically every sci-fi manga in the 70s and 80s. He knows what he's doing. The Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger sequence in particular is a great example of this. The song itself doesn't really offer a whole lot in terms of conveying the narrative, so it's up to the animators to tell that story using the Earl's machinery. You can understand exactly what's happening just by looking at what's happening on screen because you're spoon-fed enough information for you to process what's happening. You take a look at this specific part, you take in everything that's happening, and you immediately get that, okay, the Earl is altering and erasing their memories. Got it. Or maybe you don't think exactly that, but like you get it is what I'm trying to say. Like you understand every sequence utilizes these kinds of techniques, and in some cases they go unnecessarily hard with the visuals. Shep's love for Stella is revealed through multiple elaborate and vibrantly colored dream sequences, which as I've already said are the best parts of the movie. The Earl's backstory is shown in flashback sequences that convey his motivations and foreshadow what's to come for our heroes. Even some of the more subtle stuff like the blank expressions on Beryl and Stella's faces while they're brainwashed, or Shep reaching out in anguish seeing the Crescendos performing on TV. It's just so well done. This movie is a masterclass in visual storytelling. A lot of the artwork and animation also really takes advantage of the film's sci-fi setting and gets very creative with its aesthetics and designs. Everything from the design of the Crescendos' home planet, Shep's spaceship, the tech the Earl uses, the outfits. That list could go on forever. These guys were so creative. However, there is one sci-fi visual in particular that I really want to talk about. There's a space gate that characters use for interstellar travel in a couple scenes, and the animators decided to use a lot of very vibrant, flashy colors to convey just how wild the journey is. It's very reminiscent of a lot of earlier sci-fi films, especially 2001: A Space Odyssey. When you take a look at these scenes, I'm not so sure that it's a coincidence that Discovery, which is also the name of the spaceship from that movie, was released in 2001. Next, we're going to talk a bit about how the visuals and the music work together. But before that, I want to do a brief tangent about the album this film is based on. Discovery is often regarded by people who get paid to talk about music as a concept album. For those unfamiliar, a concept album is basically a type of album where most or all of the songs are linked in some way. This could be via an overarching narrative, similar theming in the songs, or just a very prominent central idea. There's a really great video by Funk that breaks down the term and talks about a few examples. I highly recommend it. You should definitely watch it, but after this video, let me fucking finish talking. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah. Discovery falls into that second category, as it was meant to pay tribute to music Daft Punk had grown up with by sampling and remixing songs they loved as kids. It's a pretty solid idea for a concept album, but it's not exactly the kind of album one would expect a story out of. However, since Daft Punk are, as the French would say, putain de génie, they managed to figure out a way. Typically in films inspired by albums like Pink Floyd's The Wall, the primary story beats are directly laid out in the tracks themselves, and the film serves as more of a visualization of the music. This is how it works throughout most of Interstella, though since there aren't a whole lot of lyrics to work with, these songs more or less dictate the general ideas of each scene. For instance, Aerodynamic is a very loud, high-intensity song. So the Interstella team decided to visualize it as a high-stakes action sequence that ultimately ends with the band being captured. Crescendos has a very similar vibe in its sound and can feel all over the place at points. So it was chosen to showcase the band's rise to popularity on Earth and how hectic the life of a star is. Conversely, Night Vision, the track immediately after Crescendos, is a slower and more somber track, which, coupled with its place in the track listing, is used to show the physical and mental toll the Earl's aggressive media campaign has had on the band. There's even a couple more subtle bits of coordination between the animation and the music, like Beryl getting one last hit on his cymbal before getting knocked out to coincide with the cymbal beat and aerodynamic. Or the Crescendos doing a performance featuring a live orchestra to capture the vibe of rising synth chords and superheroes. It's all pretty damn cool and all, but that's not where the real strength of Interstella lies. Some of my favorite sequences in the film don't just show how the songs and animation create the story, but rather how the story and animation enhance how you interpret the songs. Let's go back to that Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger sequence real quick. The song on its own is kind of innocuous. It's pretty much just a remix of Edwin Birdsong's Cola Bottle Baby, a song that Daft Punk loved as children. In the film, however, it's depicted as the sequence where the band is brainwashed by the Earl. Suddenly, the song's hypnotic rhythm and repetitive structure take on a whole new meaning, allowing the song to be viewed as the Earl's mind control hammering its way into your brain. Digital Love features an extended vocoder solo that sounds pretty cool on its own, but is transformed into a heroic anthem for Shep by the animation and story. Even Too Long, the track that all my friends say is the hardest song on this album to listen to, goes from a simple 10-minute track built on multiple samples to a culmination of all that our main characters have been through. A lot of this kind of depends on how much of an impact the story has on the viewer, but the point is that Interstella allows for a new perspective on the album that you can't get just by listening to it, and that's pretty fucking cool. Just goes to show that not all albums are concepts and not all concepts are albums. Sometimes you need a cool anime to help add some more meaning to even some of your best songs. Speaking of added meanings, let's talk a bit about themes. Okay, like play the trans. Yeah, that's right. This movie doesn't just exist to make a whole bunch of music videos. It also features a lot of thematic elements when you take a closer look at the entire story. Most importantly, and you probably already figured this out, the entire story of Interstella is a critique of the entertainment industry. Specifically, the whole practice of high-level executives grabbing young and talented artists and commercializing them to make them more appealing to the masses. In the movie, the Earl is shown to have done this tactic multiple times, disguising multiple alien musicians as humans much like he did with the Crescendos. The Earl is essentially robbing these musicians of their identity and what makes them unique in order to make them easier to commodify for the people of the world. As a result, the band loses a lot of their optimism and energy shown in the One More Time sequence, symbolizing an artist's lack of enjoyment in their work once it becomes aggressively monetized. It's not a terribly subtle metaphor, but it works pretty well in the context of the film. Also, since this is technically a Leiji Matsumoto project, a few themes that are prevalent in his works also make an appearance here. A lot of Matsumoto's works, specifically the ones that involved Captain Harlock, feature a stock romantic hero archetype, a description that fits the character of Shep pretty perfectly. The kind of guy who saves the day for selfless reasons and because it's the right thing to do. In fact, Shep even kind of looks a bit similar to how Harlock is shown to be in Arcadia of my youth, just with shorter hair. And also blue. Another aspect of the romantic hero concept in Matsumoto's work is the theme of sacrifice, which is usually treated as a noble act that is often commemorated by other characters, which, again, also perfectly describes Shep. And while it isn't as prevalent as the other two, the theme of nostalgia and a longing for the past does serve as the driving force for the band to recover their memories and stop the Earl near the end of the movie. These themes were likely incorporated into the script by Daft Punk themselves, considering they had been fans of Matsumoto's work from a young age. In an interview with Cartoon Network in 2004, they discussed how much they enjoyed stuff like Captain Harlock as children, and even stated that the music we've been making must have been influenced at some point by the shows we were watching when we were little kids. The duo clearly sought to create a story reminiscent of Matsumoto's work, which eventually came full circle when Matsumoto came on board to supervise animation. The final thing I want to analyze is the ending. What does all that stuff about the boy sleeping, the toys, and the Daft Punk album really mean? To answer that question, we're going to need to go back to the beginning of the film. Before the movie actually starts, the first things we see are clips of an interview with Daft Punk and Leiji Matsumoto. In these clips, Matsumoto says some stuff that I think sheds a bit of light on the ending. Musicians are magicians. That's what I always say. I've always had this dream or hope since my childhood childhood, and the dream itself came toward me. How should I explain this? I have all these lights flashing in my head. Sounds a bit familiar, doesn't it? Perhaps the reason why this movie kind of feels like a fever dream is because it's meant to feel dreamlike in a sense. Perhaps the young boy is simply a reflection of the childlike imagination Matsumoto and Daft Punk had when coming up with the story. Whatever the answer may be, they nailed the aesthetic they were going for with this film, and it's thanks in no small part to the mind of Leiji Matsumoto. I don't think it's that much of a stretch to say that this film wouldn't have had the impact it did without him. Man, I just love this movie. I love talking about this movie, and I love listening to other people talk about this movie. It holds a very special place in my heart because of when I rediscovered it. I rewatched it on the anniversary of Daft Punk splitting up just because I thought it'd be fun. And I ended up falling in love with the world, the characters, the story, the artwork, everything. I watched the movie like 30 more times within the next few months because I loved it. It was also my gateway drug into Leiji Matsumoto's other stuff like Galaxy Express and Arcadia of My Youth, both of which are amazing and I like them a lot. And it always makes me feel good to see people talk about it with that same level of love and respect. I know it sucks that we won't be able to see a true non-AI remaster. It sucks that the filmmakers had to turn to AI when all their other avenues failed. But I also know that the reaction to the AI remaster comes from a place of love for the film. I love Interstella. I'm upset that they had to use AI to remaster it, but I know damn well that I'm gonna fall in love with it all over again when I see it in theaters. Because, like it or not, it's proof that Daft Punk and all the guys in charge of the re-releases still care. Think about it. If they didn't care, they wouldn't have tried to put in the effort to do a 4K remaster at all. They would have just let it rot in obscurity forever. I love this movie, and it really sucks that it's come to this. But I'm still glad we got a remaster at all. Plus, it's not like they're forcing you to watch the remaster. You can find the original version online in pretty good quality if you know where to look. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. This video took way too long to make, so I'd really appreciate it if you told all your friends to watch this too. Also, just a quick announcement, I'm going to be making a follow-up video on my second channel, Venom Grump, which will include my thoughts on getting to see Interstella in theaters. So keep an eye out for that. What else? Subscribe, check out the podcast, follow me on Tumblr, and oh yeah, happy Daft Punk December, everybody.